Good afternoon. Today is April 6, 2015, and this is a meeting of the Glendale Water and Power Commission. I'm Matthew Hale, and I'm going to be chairing the commission meeting today. Madam Clerk, if we want to go right into the agenda.
Before I proceed, President Chan is absent, and as is Commissioner Camargo.
Okay. Let's go to the first item.
The roll call, I'm sorry. Commissioner Jemian.
Here.
Matthew Hale.
Here.
And Commissioner Yao.
Present.
Thank you.
So members, without objection, I'd like to move the meeting minutes from the March 2nd meeting on consent.
I have some comments regarding the minutes.
Okay.
Just some minor edits for 4A on the drought rate report. In the last paragraph, it says, in response to a question by Commissioner Yao, Ms. Christina Godinez, blah, 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 could you add a section which I'll forward to Tanya or Gloria later on, but I'd like to put in response to a question by Commissioner Yao, whether GDP Commission can recommend to the City Council to extend the suspension of the drought rate surcharge. Ms. Christine Godinez, Principal Assistant City Attorney, will report back to the GDP Commission. So everything else will be the same, but I'd like to insert that portion, whether I was commenting whether that the GDP Commission can make a recommendation to the City Council on the continued suspension of the drought rate. That was my comment back then.
Okay, Mr. President Pro Tem and members of the Commission, I thought the question had been asked, and the Commission, all other commissioners indicated they did not want to bring that back. So is it the difference between wanting to bring it back and just what you can or can't do?
No, I just want to reflect my actual comment in the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want to send that to the record. And then the other portion, I think on item 6, agenda forecast, just the date, I think, needs to be corrected, April 6th rather than April 7th. Is that correct? And then since the meeting minutes should reflect the next meeting, I think the last item, it says next meeting highlighted. Shouldn't that be April 6th instead of May 4th? Because we're talking about the minutes from last month. So if the minutes is saying the next meeting, it should be April, right? I think those are just the minor edits that I saw for the minutes.
Okay.
So it sounds like you're making a motion to amend the minutes. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
So so moved.
So moved.
Okay, so on item number 2, let's move that as amended. And I believe that brings us to item number 3.
Next item is 3, GWP Commission and staff comments.
Are there any comments from GWP staff?
No.
Comments from commissioners? Next item.
Item number 4A is reports. The first is the water conservation update by Ms. Atine Harutunian.
Here? Okay. Members of Commission, hello, my name is Atine Harutunian. I'm here to present the water conservation update. I do have a PowerPoint that I provided you copies with. If you'd like to refer to that. While I'm waiting for that to load, I can start. As you know, this is one of the worst droughts that we've ever had, so going through quickly the facts. California is still in a drought of epic proportions. Our reservoirs are still at record lows, and the Sierra snowpack is meager. And 2013 was one of the driest calendar years on record, and January 2015 and February 2015 were the driest months on record. For California to recover, we will need tremendous amounts of rain, something in around, as experts say, around 118 days straight of rain for us to just recover, and obviously we know that's not possible. So with that said, on January 17th, Governor Brown declared a drought state of emergency, and so all state agencies were directed to take all necessary actions to prepare for drought conditions. On April 19th, the governor signed an executive order calling on the state to redouble its actions. On July 29th, Glendale declared Phase 2 of our mandatory water conservation ordinance. And on April 1st, 2015, Governor Brown signed an executive order imposing restrictions to achieve a statewide 25% reduction in potable water by February 2016. I'd like to just briefly go over Phase 2 and what our Phase 2 water conservation plan, mandatory water conservation phase is. Customers currently can only water their landscapes 3 days a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, for no more than 10 minutes at each watering station. Customers who do not comply will receive a violation warning notice, and then repeat violations can result in fines up to $1,000. So far, we have sent about 1,489 letters of our first violation and only 15 of the second violation letter. And we've received about 674 additional calls on water conservation. The letters come from either the website, where customers can anonymously fill in a form to report water waste, or they can call our water waste hotline, which I'll get to in the next few slides. So how are we doing so far? When we declared mandatory in July 29th of 2014, since August 2014 through January of this year, there has been about a 10% reduction in water consumption versus the same period in fiscal year 2013 and 2014. Customer usage has increased since January, mainly due to the unusually warm weather that we've been having. So when temperatures rise, water usage also goes up. So what's next for us? The State Water Board will release draft regulations on April 17th to implement the governor's directive for a 25% reduction in water use. Metropolitan Water District will also soon release their water allocation plan. Based on the State Water Board's regulations and MWD's allocation, GWP will make a recommendation to City Council to move to either Phase 3 or Phase 4 of our mandatory water conservation ordinance. Increasing...
Sorry,
yes.
I want to interrupt while you're on that point specifically. So what you're saying is that it's likely that we're going to make a recommendation to move to one of the next stages. It's almost a certainty at this point. Is that correct?
I would say it's almost a certainty, Mr. Hale. It's just a matter of how do we have to go deeper than just the next phase.
Okay.
And depending on the phase that we go to, we're definitely increasing our conservation outreach and educating customers about any of the new restrictions that are coming down. We'll continue to promote our programs, our services, including our landscape classes, MWD's turf replacement program rebates, and provide tips and information on the water shortage. What are some of our neighboring cities doing? Excuse me. Currently, all neighboring cities are in mandatory water conservation, just as we are, implementing a 3-day-a-week watering schedule. The cities of Burbank, Crescenta Valley, South Pasadena, and the Foothill Water District will be going into 2-day-a-week watering once MWD announces its allocation plan. Pasadena has just recently asked their board to move to a 2-day-a-week watering schedule, but we're told to wait until the MWD announcement. So everyone's just in a hold position until MWD does inform us of their allocation plan. I'd like to take you through the different phases of our water conservation ordinance, but before I do, I'd like to briefly just touch on the no water waste policy, just to remind our customers and our commission that this no water waste policy is always in effect regardless of the mandatory water restriction phase that we are in. So and you'll see that some of the stuff will not be in the different phases, as I'm telling you, because it's already listed in the no water waste policy. For example, no hose washing of paved areas. We suggest customers use a broom. No overspray or runoff of water at any time. Water leaks must be repaired in 72 hours. No irrigation between the hours of 9 a.m. and 6 p.m. Dining establishments will only serve drinking water when requested by a customer. And those are some of the ones I wanted to touch on. The customers can always find the no water waste policy on our website, as well as the mandatory water conservation brochure that was mailed to them last month with the drought charge letter. Those are on the back. To take you briefly through our water conservation phases, as you currently know, we are in phase 2. As mentioned, irrigation is only allowed 3 days a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, for no more than 10 minutes at each watering station. If we were to move to phase 3, those would be reduced to 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Saturdays, for no more than 10 minutes at each watering station. Phase 4 is 1 day a week, only on Saturdays, no more than 15 minutes at each watering station. And phase 5 is the first and third Saturdays of each month. Irrigation is limited to the deep irrigation of trees and shrubs for no more than 20 minutes at each watering station. If you go down to the third line item, decorative fountains, in phase 4, the use of potable water to clean, fill, or maintain levels in decorative fountains in exterior fountains is prohibited, and then it changes in phase 5 to interior and exterior water features. And then vehicle washing is affected in phase 5, where there shall be no washing of any commercial or non-commercial privately owned vehicles on your premises, only to be used at a car wash. So those are some of the changes in the different phases, and those are also available on our website. What can our customers do to continue to conserve and to promote conservation is to talk about it, encourage it, and set an example for other customers. All tips and information can be found on our website, GlendaleWaterandPower.com. We constantly update it with new information and tips on water conservation. Customers can apply to the MWD Turf Replacement Program and get a rebate, $2 per square foot, to replace their turf with California-friendly plants. Customers can always take advantage of our free landscape classes to become water-wise gardeners. We have 3 more upcoming classes and are looking to add more throughout the summer. Always check Metropolitan Water District for rebates and new programs at SoCalWatersmart.com. And customers can always anonymously report water waste by calling 550-4426 or also visiting our website and reporting it anonymously.
And Atine, the site for MWD would apply to not just re-landscaping, but also appliance purchases, yes, water-saving toilet purchases, and those
yes,
types
it applies to residential and commercial. It provides rebates and the turf replacement.
Some of those are just very good, significant. In fact, you can oftentimes pay for whatever it is you're buying, a toilet, for instance, to put in a water-saving. So it's worth checking it out. And I believe Home Depot and Lowe's and some of the larger establishments actually tie into it, so it's pretty easy to complete the transaction. So by all means, we encourage
yes,
folks to do that.
The turf replacement program, as I mentioned, provides a $2 per square foot for replacing your grass with California-friendly plants. Customers must go through the MWD website. It is not based on the city's website, so that's SoCalWatersmart.com, and rebates must be reserved prior to starting the project. Residents also are encouraged to follow the regulations set forth in our Glendale zoning ordinance, and we do provide a copy of the ordinance to customers once they apply to the program. Yes.
Excuse me. So we pattern a lot of our programs after MWD. I think do we have a different approach, though, with respect to replacing turf with artificial turf versus replacing with plants? And if so, can you give a little history on that? When was the last time we as a city visited that issue?
Well, I know it's going to come up to City Council soon because a lot of customers have asked about the use of artificial turf in the front yard. I know at this point we do not allow it, but it will be recommended to City Council to revisit that issue, and I'm not sure when that time frame is.
Yeah, it's coming up. I don't know the exact date. We've got some council meetings that were off for the next couple of weeks, but it's something that they are going to revisit and take a look at. So, yeah, for us here in participating in the MWD program, it's ornamental turf replacement with non-turf, native products, hardscape, rock and DG, and those kind of things to take the place of the ornamental turf. So at this point, the prohibition against artificial turf in front yards is still in effect here in Glendale.
Another website that we have for our customers, which is very useful because a lot of times our customers come to us and ask to see examples of residents that have replaced their turf with California-friendly plants. We have our GlendaleWaterWiseGardening.com website where customers can actually look at over 200 sample or examples of California-friendly landscapes that are in Glendale, Pasadena, and Burbank that have either gone through the MWD program or have just gone on and transformed their landscapes. So customers can actually click on the plants and the the pictures, create plant lists, print them out, give them to their gardeners or take them to the nurseries and purchase those plants. So we make it a lot easier for them to see how they could transform their landscapes into more California-friendly ones. Another program we offer our customers is our Water Smart program. This is helping customers save water in a different way through home water reports, as well as providing them with an online portal. This started in August 2014, where customers receive free home water reports either through the mail or via email, and there's a sample of a report up on the screen. Customers can also access their water use information through the portal, which is glendale.waterinsight.com. Customers can also receive leak alerts via email and soon via text messaging. Since October 1st, 2014 through January 31st of this year, our customers have been saving an estimated 2.3%, about 55.4 acre feet or 24,512 cubic feet of water. So we're expecting an overall savings about 5% once the year is up. Currently, we have almost 18,000 customers that are receiving water reports, and 1,800 of them are registered on the portal. So when they receive the reports, they also receive tips and information, and it also compares their homes to similar-sized homes where they could see how others are conserving water and how much they're conserving. And below is an example of the portal and what they see. They can actually drill down their water usage information by month, by week, by day, and see the comparisons as well. Another opportunity our customers can take advantage of where they could see their usage, electric and water, is our new mobile app. It's only available for the first 2,000 customers. Customers can view their current and past bills. They can pay their bills. They can set budget goals. They can submit service requests to us, report outages, and of course see their near real-time electric and water usage information, and that gives them more power to manage their usage rather than wait for their bill to come every other month. Customers can download it through Android or Apple through their Apple App Store, and it's called GWP Mobile MyConnect. And currently we have about 1,300 customers already registered with the mobile app. This is just an overview of some of the programs I mentioned. Residential, as mentioned, we also have rebates on our website, but anytime customers can also visit MWD's website, SoCalWatersmart.com, for turf replacement and other rebates. We also have programs available for our business customers, such as the small business upgrades, where they do come and do an audit of their energy and water saving features and provide them up to $2,000 worth of free installation of energy and water efficient upgrades. And again, business customers can also take advantage of this SoCal WaterSmart website. That is all I have. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
And Mr. President Pro Tem, I think it's a good opportunity to add to this some of the things that the city is doing on its own. So obviously we're one of, if not the largest water users in the city of Glendale. So we've taken it from our facilities. We've met this morning actually with Parks and the Public Works Department to look at all of our operations and see where we can begin to put together a program and a plan based on priorities of where we can first attack, as I said, ornamental turf and see where that can be replaced at our facilities. GWP is going to take an aggressive stance on that and just start replacing most of our pump stations, substations. We're even looking at our reservoirs. You may know the location of some of our reservoirs which have completely a grass top on them. High water users. So we're going to look at replacing those. Some of the larger projects we're going to participate in the MWD program and see if we can't get a rebate. Some of the smaller stuff that we just want to get done, we're going to go ahead and attack that a little bit earlier. Parks is doing the same thing. In the case of large public medians, as you saw in the governor's order, he specifically called those out and said that large public street medians should not be or could not or shall not be irrigated with potable water. So in Glendale, if you think of some of our largest, Glen Oaks, Brand, south of Colorado, Glendale Avenue north of the 134 freeway, wide, heavy grass. All three of those are irrigated with reclaimed water. So they would be exempt, at least today, from the governor's order. Doesn't mean that we don't look in the future to removing the turf, but as of today, those are meeting the governor's intent because they're all 100% irrigated with reclaimed water. And so as we continue to look at opportunities to move reclaimed water, and you'll see that in the upcoming report, whether that's parks, schools, large turf areas, we're looking at opportunities to do that. Parks themselves are looking at opportunities to do turf replacement programs. There's a lot, as you can imagine today, a lot of growing expertise in how to put together a park with not as much of the traditional turf as they used to put in there. Golf courses doing the same thing. Our own Oakmont Country Club has done an outstanding job. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they are the largest project under MWD's turf replacement program. It's close to 1 million square feet.
Almost, yes.
So they replaced on their golf course, which is kind of almost sacrilegious to those of you who golf and those in the golf business, but it was taken upon, and just to add to their benefit as well, they're a major reclaimed water, recycled water user. So they replaced that, did an excellent job. The course looks really, really good. They participated in the program, and they're obviously using less water, so that we can take that success story, spread that to other large recreational sites. I think is going to be a very good thing. We really, Oakmont's done a great job. I can't say enough about them. And by doing what they did allows us to use them to go out and say, this can be done. For those of you who say it can't be done, if you're in a country club membership, won't like it and they'll resist it. If you're in a public place, no, they want grass to run around. Hey, it can be done. You can keep your turf, but you can also try to reduce a lot of it so that you're also reducing irrigation at the same time. So that effort from the Civic Center campus, you gentlemen may have seen this weekend, the highlight in the Times was the disparity between rich and poor in the use of water, but it also pointed out some of the city halls who have lush landscapes and turf and how much water they use and whether or not those agencies were going to set the example. In Glendale, we want to set the example. So we're going to go ahead and start doing that right away, at least in the water department. Parks has a number of facilities they're going to go after. So you're going to see that happening. Fountains are off. We don't have to at this point based on the conservation mandatory conservation phase that we're in, but we need to set that example. So if you'll notice, the fountains in Perkins and fountains under MSB are off, and the fountain that we have on Maryland, we have a few fountains left, but that one is off as well. So, and we're looking to do something different, at least with the Perkins fountain. I don't think that's going to come back as a water feature. I think we're going to plant that as probably a California native garden. And tie it into the sculpture and use it as an example for people to come and look and see how they can plant those. Our urban forester, our maintenance services administrator, who's also the city's urban forester, is already out looking for drought-tolerant trees. These are the Mediterranean-type trees that survive in climates where they have little rain and do very, very well. Unbelievably, there isn't a big selection of those. I imagine the nurseries will start stocking up on them pretty soon, but they're out doing that, and Parks is going to be doing that as well. So there's a big push forward for the city as the lead, to be the leader in this, set the example, and begin to show people what we can do. Not only is it imperative that we do that just to conserve, but also in the course of doing it, we can show how it's done. And tell people, this is how we did it, this is how you might do it. Here's some examples. We did a park one way, we did a city hall area one way, we did a pump station another way. You can come and look at it and see for yourself. It can be done, and whatever way we can assist you, we will. So just to add that to all of this, again, this, like anything else we do, certainly not putting this at the doorstep of the ratepayers and expecting them to pull the full weight. This is incumbent upon us to not only do our share, but also set the example. So that's happening as well.
Okay. Any questions?
I just have a follow-up question on what you said, Mr. Zone. So the city is going to do all it can to conserve water. On slide 13, Ms. Hartunian, you mentioned that the ratepayers have saved an average of 5% from October 1st to January 31st.
Oh, no, they've
Threw
saved
that out.
2.3%. We're expecting overall 5% from the start of the program.
But that's this specific program.
Oh, Pacific.
Overall, since phase 2 of the conservation went in, we're about 10%.
10%.
Yeah.
So what portion of the city's conservation is accounted for that, or it doesn't?
I don't know offhand. We can look at that. I know that under Mr. Boeg, when he had the water operation and continued with Mr. DeGhetto, that we're looking at all opportunities. In fact, right now, Mr. DeGhetto is going through also a storage evaluation to see if we can't reduce storage in certain parts of the city where we may have overstorage, redundancy, and that type of thing. So that alone will save us water right there. And then again, in going through and looking where we're irrigating. So Parks is probably the biggest user, and I'm not picking on them. They're just natural. That's who has most of the landscape. But I can tell you, after meeting with them today, they're convinced that they need to reduce that, and they have. Their bill has gone down as well. They're going to have to start looking at maybe some ways that we haven't in the past, just like everything else that we're involved in. This drought is going to make us think about things we never thought about before, and change the way we do certain things. And that'll probably be a permanent way of doing business for the future. So I don't know offhand, Mr. Yao, what the exact percentage is, but I can tell you we are saving. We need to save more, no doubt. I mean, if we're at 10% overall as a city, we got to get to 25. So we got a lot of work to do.
But is there a way to track separately what the city's doing?
Yeah, sure. We can do that through our bills and see what we're doing.
Yeah, in the future when we do are presented with conservation reduction, when you show that 10% has been reduced, can there be a separate line item for the city's saving conservation measure as well, so that we can compare what the city's doing? If we exceed it, that's great. So the ratepayers will get to know that the city is doing all it can, that we're saving more water than the average customer.
I'm sure we can do that.
Great thing to promote.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you.
I've got one more quick question. Is there any specific outreach done to the multifamily marketplace and with property management companies in Glendale to let them know, one, that the rebates are available for the conservation measures, and then maybe if there are some near recycled water, start converting all those over for irrigation purposes and start driving those billings down, driving that usage down?
In terms of water education and conservation, yes, we do reach out to them separately, provide them enough information to share with their tenants as well, whether it's brochures, translated letters. We do specifically target them and property management companies in terms of recycled water.
Yep. We're looking at that. As you know, that's a case where the resident isn't really the captured audience you want to go after, because most residents in multifamilies do not get a water bill. Usually it's a single meter that serves the business, so they don't have that same connection. The property owner does, even though the tenants, if you explain to them, you're paying that bill one way or the other, but it's really the property owner that probably will take the lead in trying to save water. So we work with the property management firms and individual multifamily units as well. And with this turf replacement especially, we've got a lot of apartment buildings that would, I think, benefit from taking advantage of that as well. So.
I have another question. What would prompt GWP to recommend to the council whether to move into phase 3 or phase 4?
Likely will be we're going to take a quick look at where our irrigation from a city level is at first, and then take a look at the next. January is a relatively cold month, so we're taking a look at the next. And that I say January because that's the last month that closed. We'll look at February and March because they were warmer than usual. We'll see what kind of usage. My sense is that you're going to see it had gone up because of the hotter weather, and really what's going to drive it is MWD's allocation. So they're almost going to force us. They will. I mean, that's kind of what drives us as a member agency of MWD is when they put their allocation out, which should be first of the year, June, first of fiscal year, excuse me, around mid-June or end of June. That'll dictate which phase we go into. And my sense is it's going to be pretty drastic. That's why, while we think for sure we need to go into 3. I've left open the option that we may have to go into 4 because it's so severe. And to get to the executive order of 25%, like I said, we're about 10 now. And that was September, so you got to figure you're going through the coldest months of the year. It's not been obviously as cold as it has been in the past, but it is the least amount of irrigation water that's used during that period of time, and irrigation is 60% of the usage of water. So as things have warmed up, I think you're going to see that has gone up. So for us to limit irrigation to the minimal level, I think is what's going to be necessary for us to get this.
So to go into phase 3 or phase 4, how does that impact the drought rate surcharge?
The drought rate surcharge goes up with every phase.
Goes up.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So potentially you go directly to phase 4 and skipping phase 3, the surcharge will automatically apply to phase 4.
Correct. Correct, which is in the presentation to the city council or at the presentation we develop at the time that we've decided we're going to go forward with a recommendation. We'll have all that information included. But each phase has its own drought rate charge that goes with it.
And that, again, applies to all ratepayers, even if they're in the lowest tier right now. They're
Correct.
saving as much water as they can, but they're still gonna pay that surcharge.
Correct.
So does it make sense for us to immediately go to phase 3, knowing that we're going to end up either
And that's
there
a
or phase
decision,
4?
and Mr. Hale, that's a good question, and a decision that we may make ahead of even the MWD allocation report. So really, the next couple of weeks, as we sort of really kind of dig in and drill down to everything we have, we may end up going right back to council and saying, let's go to 3. We may have to go 4 in a couple of months,
Yeah.
but let's go to 3 now. So I'm kind of waiting for that end of March report and see, but knowing how warm it was, I have a sense that we used a lot more water than is typical for March. And if that's the case, then I agree with you. I think I wouldn't hesitate to go to council and say, I think we need to move to 3, and then wait to see what MWD does until we get in the depths of the summer and go, we may need to go to 4 in just a few months.
That was going to be my suggestion. I think if anything, you want to ease into it, to allow people to kind of acclimate from phase 2 to phase 4. I think it's a drastic change for a lot of people. Since we already know we're going to go to a 3 anyway, doing that as soon as possible, I think would be at least my recommendation.
And realizing the water savings from
Absolutely.
moving from phase,
Yeah, as
phase
soon
2
as
to
we
phase
can.
3. I mean,
Right.
the sooner we do it, the more savings that we're going to
absolutely.
pocket in the next.
I mean,
Absolutely.
from a budgetary perspective, the drought rate kind of surcharge covers the utilities. So
It does. It
there
does
is-
protect us against that revenue loss and making sure that the fixed assets of the water department are taken care of during even the down periods. But it does make sense for us to try to get there as soon as possible. We've been very, very cautious in how we've approached individuals who aren't quite getting the message. So it's been what I call the softer educational type approach. We haven't issued any citations or fines, even though we have the ability to do that through our neighborhood services code enforcement operation. But we're going to need to look at that. We can't, I mean, across the state, you're seeing more and more agencies, I hate to use the term, coming up with water police, hiring individuals and inspectors and code enforcement people to handle just that. We don't think we're quite there yet, but we did talk to our code enforcement people today about what it's going to take to look at least repeat offenders. People we've reached out to, we've talked to them about it, and they continue to do it anyway. I think those people, in all fairness, need to be, there needs to be a better disincentive than just us educating them. So since September we've been in this, people are aware of it. I don't think you can hide from the fact that we're in a very severe drought. Watching the news, reading the paper, if you're on the computer, you know it's happening. I think people know that irrigating is the number one issue when it comes to water use and then consequently water conservation. So, we've done a good job, I think, of getting the message out and being very lenient in how we've handled folks who haven't quite gotten it. And again, just as Mr. Jemian said, phasing people in, letting people learn about it. And I think we've done that. So, at this point, we're going to have to probably move a little bit faster on some of these things, and people are going to have to be able to comply. Again, we don't want to be, we don't want to make criminals and fine our criminals out of our customers and fine them. But at the same time, for folks, especially repeat folks, when you have everybody else complying and you have a few people that just won't comply, then I think it is appropriate to have a disincentive, a little stronger disincentive for them to comply, especially the situation we're in. So we'll keep you posted on that. And in fact, in our conservation update, that's probably something we'll keep. As Ms. Hartooni did today, telling you how many letters we've issued. If we go to citation, we'll talking about those and fines and those kind of things. But my hope is that we can get people to comply without knowing that. But we're going to have some folks, that's just my based on my experience. We're going to have some folks that just aren't going to comply. So have all of the tools in our toolkit that we can to drive home the point and make sure that we're conserving and everybody else is conserving. I think is important.
And if we go down that road, it will be all the more critical that the city will be playing its role in conserving, and the utility will be playing its role in conserving.
Absolutely.
As well.
No question about it.
Okay. Any other questions? Let's move on to the next item.
The next item is 4B, Recycle Water Program Report. Michael DiGhetto.
So, Mr. President, Pro Tem, members of the Commission, we've talked about this, and it's come up both at the commission level, and I think I've talked to a couple commissioners individually, and we just had, as the water utility went through some really challenging financial times the last couple of years, just trying to get some of our main systems up, we had set aside the recycled water system for a while. I think what you're going to find when Michael goes through this is we've done a lot of really good work. The city has a pretty fair infrastructure. We got a lot more we can do, but we have a pretty fair infrastructure in place. So a couple of things that we want to do, and Mike will get into details on that, is take advantage of some of the monies that are available through grants and bonds right now for specific recycled projects, which we have those projects shovel ready and ready to apply. And the other thing is to go through our own CIP, approved CIP, and see if we can shift some of our assets towards recycled projects, if it makes sense, especially if we can get it to the heaviest users, schools, parks. We're even looking at the downtown area. I'm not sure we're going to be able to get there in a short period of time, but that's ultimately we want to bring that to that downtown area where we'll have all the new mixed-use developments downtown that are all dual plumbed. So to be able to get the water to those facilities that they can use, I think will also have a really big impact. But I'll let Michael go through this. I just wanted to say that we're really starting to crank back up our attention to this particular issue.
President Pro Tem, members of the Commission, my name is Michael DeGhetto. I'm the Assistant General Manager for Water at Glendale Water and Power. And I'm going to give an update on our recycled water system. So currently, we have about 21 miles of distribution lines, 6 recycled water pump stations, 5 recycled water storage tanks. And so far, we've invested about $20.3 million in that system. We've got 45 recycled users, and the source of our recycled water is Glendale's share of the Los Angeles Glendale Water Reclamation Plant, which has a production of about 4,750 acre-feet per year. So the blue lines in the PowerPoint shows the existing water mains, recycled water mains. And then the blue dots represent the recycled water tanks, where those are located. And then the red triangles, those are the pump stations. And then we've got green X's that show the users on the system. And then we've got red X's, which are basically very large users. Oakmont Country Club Golf Course, Shoal Canyon Golf Course, the Shoal Canyon Landfill, Forest Lawn Memorial Park, and our own Grayson Power Plant, where we use recycled water for the cooling towers, and also the Glendale Community College. And as Mr. Zern had mentioned, we have some planned recycled projects as well. And I'll go over those at the end also. So of the 4,750 acre-feet a year that's available from the plant, Glendale's share from the Legwort plant, we're using a little over 2,000 acre-feet per year of that. So if we expand, we have recycled supply that we can provide. And just to give a comparison, how that compares to the potable system. So, there's 21 miles of pipe in the recycled system. There's almost 400 miles of pipe in the potable system. There's 6 pump stations versus 28, 5 storage facilities versus 30. And our total storage in million gallons, there's about 1 million gallons of recycled storage in it versus about 185 million gallons of potable storage. So the recycled system is much smaller.
So, Michael, just to get a sense of scale as to the users, about how many acre-feet does an Oakwood or Oakmont golf course use?
I don't know Oakmont.
Or one of the large consumers.
Yeah, so, actually, when we get into the part about the new projects, we talk a little bit about estimated. So maybe some users might use 50. Let's say a very large user might use 50 acre-feet in 1 year. And then some other users, and I'll get to that when we say maybe there's 3 users, that might up to 120 acre feet. And so you could deduct that from, the potable usage, right? Which would make the, if in our annual report we talk about that, we show the potable usage, recycled usage, and those things.
We can get that number and shoot that.
No,
Yeah.
it's just, I wanted to get a sense of scale, what each
Yeah.
large user you add on, we have about, 2,700 acre feet left of capacity.
Yeah, so
it's-
we have a lot of capacity to add on, and going forward for a long time, we're looking at the large users first, and then maybe over time you might add on smaller users. Yeah. And so near term, extending a system to serve public works, basically for refilling street sweeping trucks and things like that.
This is Public Works is actually doing a sewer diversion project, wastewater diversion project, where they're going to drive a wastewater line from Chevy Chase before it enters the city of LA and drive it across our yard and through down Colorado to our plant, to Lagwarp, where we get our water from, so that we can take essentially the entire southern part of the city. That wastewater goes to Hyperion. So you can imagine that's very expensive. Plus, we lose that throughput in Lagwarp. In addition to that, at the same time, we're running a reclaim line that's going to go through there with hydrants for Public Works to use in their street sweepers and in watering trees. But also, we're putting a hydrant, as you may be aware, the fire training facility is at the Public Works corporate yard. So we're going to put another hydrant there, and so during their exercises where they use water to put out they are car fires and other things in a controlled environment for their training purposes, they'll be using reclaimed water. That's a lot of water, folks. I got to tell you, I don't know if you've ever been to one of those fire demonstrations, but there's a lot of water that comes out of there. So to the extent that we can replace that, I think that's going to be great. So.
Commissioner,
It's a long time coming. We could have had the reclaimed water in there about 2 years ago. It's been the wastewater line that's been a problem, but there's no sense digging one ditch and then coming back and digging up another one. So we wanted to do the two together.
and Commissioner Hill, that's like an example, like say 10 acre feet to pick up those customers. And then the Betty Davis projects, which we've talked about at the commission meetings before. That's a recent project we completed. It was 4 acre feet. And then future projects, and these are some of the ones we're thinking about, or we are going to apply for some grant funding. Some to the Glendale Unified Schools District, one we're calling Glendale Transmission Main, I think that is, and then San Rafael, Chevy Oaks, and then Chevy Chase Golf Course, with kind of estimates of the acre feet per year. And the ones with the star we're applying for right now.
Can you talk further about the grant program?
Yeah, so it's based from Proposition 1, Proposition 84, and through the state is we make application for projects that are shovel-ready type of thing, and then show how that's going to reduce imported water and water usage, and using local resources like recycled water.
And what is the portion of a project like this? How much does the city have to cover versus what we get from the state?
There is matching with that, and it's less than 50%, I'm pretty
Well,
sure.
generally on the matches, they're like 80-20.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can be as high as 90-10. But if you kind of rule of thumb, 80-20, 20 to the city, 80 to the granting agency, the state in this case. So we're hopeful of that. And we did go through an initial round and weren't successful, but I think the whole dynamic has changed today. I think that first round, and Mike, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they were looking at real big hitting projects. So they were looking for major, and even up north, you're still going to have that north and south sort of competition. So to the extent that they could do something with agricultural irrigation and things like that. So I think in this next round, you're going to see a lot more focus on the smaller projects that get the job done and set an agency like Glendale. This isn't just is necessarily a short-term fix to the drought. It's long-term. We're in. Once we get this installed and set up, it's reclaimed.
So are those estimates the full cost, including the city's cost and the customer's cost?
Yeah, it's the full cost.
Okay, so
It's
the grant
estimate.
funding will cover the full cost so that the customer doesn't have to pay for anything?
We are,
Except for the 20% match.
we're the customer.
Yeah, so the city is the customer.
It's
but
our
the-
20%, and then it would be the 80% from the state.
Right.
So these would all be city-generated projects,
Right.
not private projects. We'd work with the school district to bring the water up to the district and be up to the district to then irrigate their own set. We'd stub it out at the curb and then
Right.
they'd take it, or at the meter, I should say.
Yeah, the same thing for Chevy Oaks and.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Now, the country club will be an interesting one. That may be a little bit different situation. So I don't know how we deal with that. Legally, we'd have to have some sort of a partnership agreement with them. But those are all eligible projects, public-private partnerships. We would still have the grant pay for the majority of that and then figure out for us, you know, if we were bringing the water to the facility, it's essentially all our infrastructure. Then if there's any cost for irrigating or for taking it from the city into the site, then the property owner would be. But I'm guessing that all of these are for us to bring the mains up to the property, so that's all on us.
And kind of go over those again on the map here. But the existing pump stations, then planned main, and then proposed new projects. Disney Campus, Betty Davis, the Keppel Elementary and Toll Middle School, Fremont Elementary, and then a couple of users in the Camino San Rafael area and the Chevy Oaks, and Chevy Chase Country Club. And just that small little piece down there in the public works yard.
So all the lines in pink are the costs that you have presented in the presentation, right? So those are the city costs that potentially could be matched by the state grant.
It's the total project cost is what I was trying to show.
Yeah,
on-
that's the
on
total
those.
project cost, so you figure 80% of that would be grant funded and 20%. Rule of thumb,
Yeah.
I'm not sure specifically. The pink, everything in pink is planned. So that included that list that Michael showed you, plus some that we've already funded through other means. You have the corporate yard on there. That one's already done. As far as funding, that's going to be 100% city. So those are the planned projects that were applied for the grants for. But some of the projects we'll be undertaking as part of our regular water infrastructure upgrades. We have Hoover Keppel Toll, which that's a lot of water right there for, you know, that very high concentration. You have a grade school, middle school, high school. So again, we're sort of at this point cherry picking the largest potential users first and working our way from there. Camino San Rafael, for those familiar, that's an area they have a lot of open space, common ground that's owned, I guess, through the homeowners association. So there's a lot of irrigation that occurs in those areas, hillsides, medians, open space areas included in their as their responsibility. So they do use quite a bit of water, and so to get those reclaimed up there, they've been asking for it. Unfortunately, just it's not something that had been pursued with much vigor in the past.
And then other work that we're doing is we're working on a recycled exchange agreement with Burbank just to sort of enhance the reliability of the recycled system. Because we have some customers now that have dual plumbing, say for their restrooms, and when leg warps down, there's a possibility that the restrooms can't be used. So we're going to have an interconnection with Burbank, basically, in those times that the plant's down, just to be able to keep the occupants being able to use the restrooms.
Interesting dilemma. You don't think about that at first. Here's the great dual plumbing. You get it hooked up to the reclaim system. Well, you can't cross-connect it to the potable water system. So if for any reason lag warp goes down, how do we service them? Because it is the wastewater system that's using that. So Burbank does not use, Burbank has their own waste treatment facility, so they generate waste, reclaimed water separately. So that's a good redundant backup system.
Yeah, for both systems. And then we're also working with Pasadena on a recycled agreement, basically to get water to Pasadena and possibly converting one of the potable reservoirs or tanks that we have now to recycled water. And that's to help use that 4,000 acre feet, basically. As we go through and add customers in our system, there's still going to be some remaining. And then a neighboring agency is definitely interested in having some of that as well. Any question?
Yes, so one follow-up question. So great presentation, thank you. Excited to see that the city's moving forward on some new projects in the near term. So question for you, can you talk about the timing for all of the new projects? And then I guess with the subset through which we're looking to tap into the funding from Propositions 1 and 84, is there a time frame associated with those propositions that we need to make sure that we stay within in order to take advantage of the grants?
Yeah, the time frame is basically we need to apply in the next few months to kind of get on the list, basically, and then those sort of projects get ranked by the state to see who's eligible. And even if you get ranked and you don't get funding at first, you still stay on the list of priority. And if other projects fall off or are completed under budget, you can move up on that list for the funding. And then as far as doing the construction, those are all pretty big projects. So it would be part of the normal procurement process, contracting and build out. So I would say of the ones that I listed, say we're successful in some of the grants, it might be like a year and a half out to have them completed and in service, would be my guess.
Mm-hmm. And so the propositions, I'm not aware, do those programs run until the funding runs out, or is there a sunset date built into the proposition?
They run until the funding runs out.
Okay.
And then we're also, as I mentioned, reevaluating our capital program to see if there's some reclaim projects that we can start on sooner. So it's possible we could even embark on something as early as next fiscal year to do some things here. So,
but regarding that comment, if GDP were to start the project for reclaimed water, doesn't the ordinance require the customer, like Glendale Unified School District, to pay a portion of that?
Of the project?
Yeah.
We would potentially have to look at some amendments to our ordinance to accommodate the projects, but this is all part of, now evaluating this and going forward.
Right, but in the current existing ordinance, the customer who wants recycled water have to pay a portion of the line extension.
Yeah, and I think the technicality there is when they come and request it to be brought to them. I think we're getting beyond that. I think we're getting to the point where we want to bring it. So we're going to build the mains to get the water there. Now, from that point on, when you want to talk about who's going to bear the cost to get it into the unit or into the property, that would be something different. But I think it's our desire to start building the infrastructure, and it's hard to, while technically I don't know the ordinance offhand, but if it does say, we only build the infrastructure if a customer makes a request and agrees to pay, I think we're kind of beyond that as far as the mains go. We need to start getting the skeleton of the system in place. Then we can start dealing with individuals who say, I'm not interested in bringing it into my facility. Okay, it's there if you want. We can help you with grants. We can't pay that cost to irrigate or to dual plumb your facility. You'll have to pay that cost. And as I said, anything new is under the building code, under the Uniform Plumbing Code, already dual plumb. So everything you saw that came out of the ground downtown and everything that's still coming out of the ground downtown is dual plumb. It just is. We just don't have the main infrastructure there to hook to it. That's another driving point for us to get that, as I say, that skeletal infrastructure in place and then make those hookups.
But according to the new units in downtown, the owner has dual plumb, but then if they want to bring the main in quicker, then they would have to pay part of the line extension costs.
I think that's originally how it was set up, but we'll take a look at it and see. Like I said, I think we're kind of beyond that now, where it was sort of, you want it, you have to request it like it was some sort of special circumstance. I think we're getting to the point now where it's almost survival. So to the extent we can bring it, and we're using our CIP funds to help augment it. We're using grant funds to help augment it. I think it's incumbent upon us to take a real leadership role in that particular area. So we'll take a look at see how the ordinance is written. We may need to change it.
Yeah, no, definitely.
To update it to current times, based on legislation, executive orders, and so forth.
Any other questions?
Speaker?
Yeah, we have one card on this one, 4B, Mr. Bob Bornheft.
Thank you. I'm Bob Bornhoft. I'm one of the board members of the Chevy Oaks Homeowners Association, and I have with me this afternoon two of our other board members, Roger Lightheart, who is a contractor, and Jack Germain, who performs the same role. We're here. We started the recycled water process back in 2006 when you first did the presentation to San Rafael and Chevy Oaks. We've been working since then to get it to our property. What I'm hearing today is starting to make me feel optimistic all of a sudden. In March of last year, March 25th, we had a meeting with Glendale Water and Power. Laura Freeman helped set that up, and we were given a proposal where Chevy Oaks could receive recycled water, total cost of $770,000 to bring it about 2.5 miles. The association's portion of that cost was $370,000. This is for 85 homeowners. We have 23 acres of land. We use well over 2,632 HFC per billing period on our property. Over the last 2 years, or from August 2013 to August 2014, we have achieved a 20% reduction in our landscape watering. We're on the edge of losing the entire landscape now. We water our lawns 2 minutes per the 3 days allowed. Every other station that we water, we stay within the 10 minutes as best we can. The problem is, on 23 acres, I have 97 stations. Do the math. I can't water that property in a day. I can't. So 3 days, I'm splitting the systems. Now, Glendale Water and Power did, because we are in Chevy Chase Canyon, which is one of the most extreme fire zones that Glendale has. They did allow us to shift some of our uphill stations to odd days so that I'd have enough time to get the property watered and protect. We're a barrier from Pasadena to Glendale. Chevy Oaks, San Rafael, we all sit in that area where if a fire started anywhere up the canyon coming from Pasadena, it's got to go through us. When we do our brush clearance program every year, we're required, I believe it is 300 to 400 feet. I clear 1,500 feet of property all the way around that association. We are very aggressive in protecting from fire, but now I'm to the point where when the trees are so dry, they're stressed, and already the leaves are coming off of them like it's snowing. We have a problem. We're looking to get recycled water up there, and somehow we've got to figure out a way to do it. We're willing to pay the cost to tie into the line from Chevy Oaks Drive, but the $370,216, which was our portion, was to bring it from Chevy Chase Canyon up a city street, Chevy Oaks Drive, to tie into our systems. Just not affordable for us. We've had conversations with San Rafael. We've had conversations with the Chevy Chase Country Club. We've talked to Glen Knolls. There are a lot of homeowners up there, just San Rafael and Chevy Oaks is well over 600 residents. We're all trying to get recycled water. We are all large-scale users of water because we have a lot of landscape to protect, and we're fighting a losing battle. So I'm optimistic in hearing what you're saying today because the cost to the homeowner was proving to be very, very prohibitive. We just couldn't find a way to swing it Now I'm hearing that that may be subject to change, some of the state grants, but Chevy Chase Canyon, namely Chevy Oaks, because I'll be prejudiced for my community, we need the water, and we need it as soon as it can get up there. Thank you.
This is exactly what I was referring to. So, yeah, in the past, this was a particular individual request to have it brought to a certain specific area, so we had a cost-sharing proposal. But to the extent that we can cover this area, look at the other areas, the San Rafael area as well, I think this is where we need to examine what exactly the ordinance says, if it in fact says that, and where we might be able to work with the groups. Again, we get the main to your neighborhood. It's up to you from there to irrigate your common areas or to bring it into your house if that's in fact what you want to do. But for us to get the mains in place, I think that's something that we need to take a different look at, different approach at with today.
So what I'm hearing is that Mr. Bornhoff had requested the recycled water extension, but it would cost the association $370,000 to cost share the line extension.
Mm-hmm.
But you're saying that potentially if we don't get the state grant, the CIP process, the city can build that line extension up to the area.
We're going to look at that. We're going to look at that. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. It's just a change in philosophy. Again, I'm not word for word familiar with the ordinance, so we may have to take a look at that. But I think in looking ahead at our infrastructure implementation, we need to look at expanding the recycled water line as part of our own program, and not just on a individual basis for somebody who requests it, or because there's an outcry in one particular area. We need to look at what is the most strategically, what is the most beneficial for everyone, for Glendale, for GWP, for the residents and customers, for the state of California. So we got a much bigger issue that we're dealing with. I think we're going to completely reevaluate that.
But looking at the list of potential projects, there's a lot of money there. If we don't get the state grants, how would you prioritize which project?
We'll have to go back and sit down through our regular CIP program and prioritize that. I mean, don't forget, we still have potable water projects that we have to keep up on as well. So it isn't like we're going to sit down and go, well, if we don't get the grants, we'll just go ahead and cash flow all those. That isn't going to happen. But, if we can get one of those in a particular fiscal year, that might be, a lot better than none. So we'll just have to put it into the overall mix, and every year when we reevaluate our CIP program, see what resources we have available, and see what we can do in that coming year. But I think the idea is, instead of where we've been up to this point, which is essentially looking at only potable water and approaching recycled water from a different angle, that we now are kind of taking both of them and treating them equally in that, what are our needs? What can we do? And I just think the times have dictated that.
Yeah, so comment or question, not knowing how the state prioritizes and rates proposals that they receive through the proposition effort, is it possible to partner with an end user like the folks in Chevy Oaks to have them, write a letter that might go along with the city's proposal? I don't know that would add weight to that particular proposal.
I don't think it could hurt.
Yeah, so that perhaps knowing that you have not just a city, but then also an end user that is highly motivated and ready to use the water might add some weight to the...
I wouldn't discourage that. So to the extent that we can find who best to send that to, including maybe our own elected officials in this area as well. As long as you're writing letters, it's easy to make copies and send those out. We can provide anyone interested in that, a homeowners group or an individual voter who wants to send something. And
I definitely would welcome that kind of information to put in our application package. And we just have to be careful that it's not like a gift of public funds sort of issue as far as when we apply to the state.
I think what Mr. Camargo is talking about is essentially moral support. Yeah. Hey, we think you ought to fund this. We're residents of the state of California. We're voters in the state of California, and we think that you should grant this to Glendale. Not so much that we would be giving that money. We still have to walk that fine line, as I think everybody understands. Once getting the water to a particular place is one thing. Then taking it from there and putting it into individual applications, that's a whole different situation. And again, what I'm hearing is these folks are more than willing to do that if we can get the water to them. And that's kind of what we do as a water agency. It just has been a little different with reclaimed water because it's unique. It still is unique, even though it's been around for a long time.
And just to put a finer point on the conversation, and Michael, what you mentioned, and Steve, what you had mentioned, it's important that if we're going to devote ratepayer funds to a particular project, that project have a general benefit to all of the ratepayers in terms of securing our water supply. And where we invest our purple pipe should be where the greatest usages are and where we can reduce our potable water usage.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's why we're looking for the biggest hitters, because the benefit to everybody is a reduced purchase from MWD, which ostensibly lowers our costs, yada, yada, yada. We go on, and then every ratepayer benefits from that.
And most cost effectively, because that's important too.
And that's a really good point too, because we'll have to make sure, we will cross our T's and dot our I's legally to make sure everything is 218 kosher on this particular issue too, so.
Okay.
Sure.
Any other comments? Let's move on to item 4C.
4C is a strategic plan quarterly report. Craig Keenan.
So, Mr. President Pro Tem, members of the Commission, you may recall we brought to you a pretty close to final draft of strategic plan, took your comments, went back, developed the plan. It's a streamlined plan, something that's easier to read for not just us and the employees in GWP, but for the residents who are out there who can see something that's tangible, a little more tangible than you'll recall the past, which was a big binder. And so today we're coming to you. We have maintained, as the Commission had asked, the green, amber, and red notations to show you where we're at with the projects. I think you're going to see a lot of amber today, but it's early on. This is our first report to you, so we'll go through it and update you. There's also, you may recall, we had the key performance indicators, KPIs, which is what we report back to Council. So to the extent that we can tie those into this, we are doing that. In this particular case today, the KPIs that are kind of off. The delivery of these are off. So once we get the KPIs and incorporate them, we're kind of waiting for the new fiscal year. Not kind of, we are waiting for the new fiscal year when we're going to reevaluate our KPIs, probably streamline them a little bit, and then we'll roll them into here, or at least have a connection so you can see that. For this particular presentation, unless I'm wrong, Mr. Keenan, this will be just our strategic objectives.
You're absolutely correct. President Pro Tem, Commissioners, Craig Keenan, Business Transformation and Marketing Administrator. I believe you got one of these strategic plan, and and you should also have a copy of today's presentation. So, just to go over it quickly, we have 20 strategic goals, 40 key initiatives, and they're in 6 areas of emphasis. That's customer engagement and satisfaction, organization and structure, grid operations, technology and business systems, power, water, and facilities, and financial performance and business development. Additionally, I want to stress that our strategic plan, the ultimate goal is to support the realization of a larger Glendale vision. That's to provide a premier city anchored in pride of civic ownership, where success is realized through a community that is safe, prosperous, and rich in cultural offerings. This vision is accomplished with emphasis on fiscal responsibility, exceptional customer service, economic vibrancy, informed, engaged community, safe and healthy community, balanced quality housing, community facilities and our services and facilities, infrastructure, mobility, arts and culture, and sustainability. And you'll see there's a tie-in, and as we go through this in the months to come, we'll tie it in a little bit more. But I see electric and water as like the lifeblood that lets all this kind of really happen, because without that, the city can't function. So, as far as the scorecard, yes, we have the green and the yellow and the red. You're going to see all yellow this time. But I do provide some stats and things that show what we've been doing to substantiate that. So in customer engagement and satisfaction, our goal was we want to be in the top 25% of municipal utilities in value and customer satisfaction by June 2016. And we want to our business systems and processes to increase efficiency and interaction to promote customer satisfaction. And that's by June 2018. So we recently had a customer satisfaction survey, and the results of that were, they could have been higher, but they're promising, because if you look at, we had a decline in our satisfaction in 2013, but it looks like our overall satisfaction is bouncing back from 2012 levels, or to 2012 levels, and we're close to the statewide average, so we are improving. Our satisfaction with overall value has increased to the highest level in several years. It's just under half of the residential customers now award us top ratings in terms of value of service. A particular note is our customers really give our customer service organization really good scores. 76% are very satisfied with their overall experience when they call the customer service operation. And again, another one, 62% of our customers are very satisfied with their communications. Atina had mentioned it earlier. One of the key, what do we call them here? The key initiatives was to have a mobile application. We do have that in a pilot form, and we're going to be looking to go to City Council to expand that to a full-scale program. But in terms of that survey, 74% of our customers really want an app, and they're strong in support of it. In terms of organization and structure, our strategic goals were develop and increasing capability for the organization to be more proactive in decision making, be more nimble in support of the goals by 2019. Develop an organizational workforce whose competencies and skill sets are aligned with achieving our strategic vision, and ensure the strategic plan is integrated throughout the organization, and maintain a safe working environment at all times. So in support of this, we've all been began the process to look at job titles and descriptions and evaluate salaries, and that's just starting. You do have the strategic plan that's been finalized. Mr. Zern sent it to all the managers, and encouraging them to meet with their employees to explain the plan and their role in realizing our vision. In terms of grid operations, we wanted to reduce preventable outages on the electric and the power side to below 25 per year by this June. I believe we're on track for that, but we'll see in our next report card. We want to reduce unaccounted for water to below 5% by next June 2016. Reduce technical and non-technical losses to below 6% by 2016 June, and fully automate 35% of our feeders by 2020. So one of the key initiatives in support of grid operations on the electric side was our OMS-DMS project, our outage management distribution management pilot, and we have that project's essentially completed, and it's been tested, and it's ready to go to operation. We just have to develop some procedures and on that.
Craig, can you just give a little bit more detail on unaccounted for water? I think that might...
Unaccounted for water. Well, I might defer to Mike on this one, but it's basically how much do we buy, how much do we bring out of the ground, and how much do we know we've sold to customers. So there's always a difference between that. And we want to keep that as low as possible. In fact, there's a requirement with the best management practices to keep that at a certain level. And
the whole storage evaluation that we're undergoing right now will assist with that as well. So you can imagine it's nice to have it proper storage, but having too much is not a good thing. Holding your water for too long, then all the treatment that goes with it. So Michael's done a great job in identifying those particular areas. It's always kind of a, where do you go with how many days is enough? 10 days enough? Is 15 days enough? Is 30 days enough? Is 40 days too much? And when you look at kind of the balance of what your needs are, your availability, so we have good availability from MWD, we have 2 inlets from MWD, we got a lot of storage facilities, probably more storage facilities than we really need, to be honest with you, in this day and age. And as Mike has surmised, back in the day when the city was being developed, it might have been more necessary to have that, as you had outlying areas that were a bit remote. Today, it's not as essential. You know, you can quickly switch and have water coming from another location and service a whole area just because of the system in place, the distribution system in place. So yeah, I think this is really going to be a big one for us. And when we come back and give you an update report on that, I think you're going to see that. Whatever, again, the number of days that we decide to keep in storage is going to have a tremendous impact on what we buy from MWD, the amount of treatment that we have to do. Treatment isn't cheap. The level of treatment we have to do, and as we're finding, some of that treatment can be very, not only very expensive, but it can be very much more difficult to handle, depending on the type of chemical or gas that's used for the process. So if we can avoid having to use those more dangerous chemicals and gas, all the better. And if we get down to a straight chlorination system, then hey, that works a lot better for our employees and their exposure, to the residents in the areas of these water reservoirs, and most importantly to our costs overall for everybody. So. And on the technical and non-technical electric system losses, as Craig mentioned, we have the OMS DMS system in place, but as we modernize our grid, we're going to see that it's just lost because the system is maybe archaic, old, and needs to be upgraded in some places. The loss can also come from the non-technical electric system losses when people are stealing it. So to the extent that we can, through our automation and our metering system, be able to really zero in on somebody that has unusual usage. How come their electricity goes up at 2 a.m. in the morning, and then it just goes through the roof? Well, maybe maybe they got something going on they shouldn't, or we just see different factors. So I think we have a hard time quantifying what our loss actually is, because we use a couple of different methods for doing that. But I think, and intuitively, I believe that our loss level is probably a little bit higher than average. So we can bring that down. That can be quite expensive. Because as you know, as you're pushing energy across the line, let's say on the technical side of things, that's energy you bought, but it's energy you can't sell if you lose it. So that's a straight loss. Whatever you paid for it, it dissipates over the line, and you got an issue there. So I think I talk about this a lot because I think that's one that we zero in on. You're going to see a lot of efficiencies gained by us doing that. Sorry, Craig.
Oh, that's good, because it leads right into, we did a conservation voltage reduction pilot program with a DVI. Basically, that's the system that it has a computer program that monitors the voltage at the load tap changer on a couple different feeders. And we found over 39 days we were able to reduce energy, or had energy savings of 87 megawatt hours in 39 days on those 2 feeders. And that savings was directly attributable to us being able to lower the voltage from about 123 down to 118, going over that. So it really makes a big difference. And when we looked at why we had it at 123, well, there was 30 or 40 meters out there that were really low. And some of them were on a dead transformer. So you had the voltage at 123 for 4,000 meters because you had 50 of them that you're trying to keep going. Well, we went out and fixed all that, or Ramon's engineers in the yard went out and took care of that, and we were then able to bump those voltages up to about 115, 116, and so you crank it down to 118 and everybody's happy and you're saving energy. We think that we can save around 3% citywide with a full-scale program. Now, that'll take some years to implement.
And just to add, these 2 specifically, but many others, these are functions of the modernization of the system. So it took a while to get there, and a lot of people weren't happy when we first started to roll this out, because it was all about the meters. But here, you're beginning to see some of the benefits that are related. The meters are just a small part of it. From the way we're able to build, to our leak detection, to these type of programs where we can make real tangible progress. This was a rather simple project. I don't want to oversimplify it, but there we save 87 megawatt hours in just a 39-day period on 2 feeders. So we can actually save millions of dollars through this whole program. And then the OMS DMS system is just going to be I mean, it's already starting to work. The pilot program's in place. We had an outage. We saw it. Immediately, the staff saw it. And then they saw how quickly we were able to get to it and how quickly we were able to manage it. Now, to the credit of the staff, they do a great job long before they had this system. I mean, they just do a great job in outage management. This is going to help them do even better. And I think then that realizing the goals that Craig has indicated that are in here aren't going to be that difficult with some of this help we have from our overall modernization effort. Just need to put that plug in. You know, it wasn't just about the meters, and it isn't just something that happened over whatever period of time it took to put the meters in. It's an ongoing modernization of our system that is, you know, as a customer you're seeing it, because at home you're being able to see some of the things and use some of those things to help you manage your own household. But on the other hand, for us to manage the larger grid system, we're able to do that through these programs.
So the next area is technology and business systems. We have three goals there. Ensure business systems and operational systems are interconnected through an enterprise-wide architecture. Ensure businesses and operational system visibility extends across all lines of business and throughout the organization, and ensure security, privacy, and performance are considered in all IT implementations. So in terms of this, we've had a number of things that we've been able to do over the past few months. We've virtualized the environment for our major business systems, and that's completed. We've connected AMI, the OpenWay, and IEE call overflow, our CIS system to our enterprise service bus over the TIPCO. That was part of the OMS DMS project. It was a combined project. We're have a project underway to connect the ETRM data flows through the ESB as well. That I believe is going to be done in June, July. We also have another project to bring the that should be data, to the PI historian through the enterprise service bus. And then our business support systems people are working with a customer service to automate a number of their business processes, which will help them significantly improve their, the time it takes to do certain things, and that way they can get even higher scores next time we do the customer service survey. Also, we're in the process of updating all our meter firmware of our 85,000 electric meters to the 3.9. We've upgraded our collection engines, our ORS reporting system. We virtualized the ETRM servers, and we have a data warehouse. We've implemented the data warehouse. The next step will get the business intelligence tools to actually get that data out of there. And we're upgrading our firewalls.
Is there any benefit for the firmware update on the meters for end users, for customers?
Yes. We've been, if you remember, we've talked about the frame in the home area network. We have to have the firmware to 3.9 to go full-blown on that program. So as soon as that's done, we'll start rolling out the smart thermostats and the Zigbee-enabled home and that kind of thing. So that'll be another month or so. So power, water, and facilities. Upgrade our water system and facilities to automate pumps to reduce energy costs. Start construction to repower Grayson Power Plant by 2020, and complete a conceptual plan for the second interconnection facility by June 2017. In terms of what we're doing in this area, water's in the process of developing a water master plan, and it's on schedule. We're looking at internal storage optimization steps. Internal storage optimization steps have been taken with additional plan in coming months. I believe that's what Steve was talking about earlier, the water storage. We are developing right now a conceptual plan to repower Grayson, and that's on schedule. And then we're working on an integrated resource plan that will include looking at demand response and other kinds of generation or electric resources. And that's on schedule to be completed by 2015. So finally, we have business performance and business development. One of our key goals is we want to be one of the best utilities, not just average. So one of our strategic goals is to consistently be in the top 25% of APPA utilities of similar size and geographic location. And that's by June 2016. Develop the organizational capabilities to support the optimal management assets and workforce resources by 2019, and identify profitable new business ventures by 2016. So we've done some things in here. We put out an RFP to select a vendor to do a fiber business plan that closed on Friday. We have 2 responses. So we're going to go ahead and finalize that and get the plan together. The goal is to increase our fiber revenues by 5% a year starting next year. If we can do it quick more than that, that's great. So that's the strat plan update.
Just the last bullet. What do you mean by increased fiber revenue? Is that to cable provider or?
To anybody?
No, yeah, we have
fiber to whoever's interested in it. For instance, Burbank has a pretty robust fiber system. They're big customers, Disney, DreamWorks. We have Disney and DreamWorks here too. Some of the downtown offices may want to plug into it if you've got folks that are just looking for high-speed internet access to put large data across it. They'd be interested in it. So we'll sell that to them or lease it to them and make money. We do now. We make a small amount of money. I think Burbank makes over a couple $1 million.
2-3 times that.
So they're making quite a bit, and we're just kind of getting started. We're a little slow to the game in this because, again, we had some other priorities, but Craig and his staff have done a great job over the last couple of years at driving this and driving it hard. We got the system in place, and a lot of this coincides with, for instance, traffic signal management. That's because of the way the traffic signal systems are set up. They use fiber, they use the conduits, and so there's dual purpose there. So just recently we got the northern part of the city completed. That was key. So now we've got this major connection, and we can go through and start marketing this. So as Craig said, that's a bit of a conservative number we've used here, but to go out and sell it and increase our revenues to the utility by 5% each year.
Are those just for commercial customers, or what type of customers are we talking?
It's primarily commercial.
Well, because they can afford it. But if any customer who wanted to connect to fiber and they have the money, will do it. But they have to pay from where the fiber is to their house or their business. So it's sort of like the recycled water.
Yeah, we've got the infrastructure in place now, and now we can sell that to you to bring it into your house or your business.
So do you see this as a competition to Charter Cable or something like that? The city can compete with?
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it. It's not a cable TV issue, obviously, right. But they also provide their cable can run, I guess, internet's in a house. You're looking at this as high-level business, fiber. Like I said, when you're talking about Disney, and you can imagine what goes on at Disney and moving what they have across a fiber line, it's a big, robust system you're talking about. This isn't your average residential use. Our thought is if you have a resident who may have a home business that for any reason is very specific and may want this to come in, I'm seeing this as being mostly commercial, mostly big users on this system. But this is not a competitor with the cable TV.
So is it within the scope of the vendor that we select for the business plan, the fiber business plan, to potentially look at an expansion of the fiber beyond just the large commercial customers and maybe make that a larger part of GWP's?
Is that included in the...
Yes, we'll look at all, it's a plan for all customers in the city.
So the thinking here is that, depending on what happens with the Time Warner Comcast merger, we might become a Comcast territory or we might not, in which case, either way, Charter may look at Glendale as kind of a stranded community that they were trying to get out of there.
Could be.
So, we might be kind of caught in no man's land while everybody else kind of advances. So the point being, it might be a good time to look at where GWP might move into a fiber business
Certainly.
over time and explore a bond issue.
And
or
we've got the
something
infrastructure in place.
You've got the anchor infrastructure. You might want to expand that to include a few more.
GWP has fiber, Tropic has fiber.
Right.
City ISD now has fiber connecting all the buildings, so
Yeah, so
there's plenty of
might make
city-owned-
sense to integrate all of that resource into a coherent plan and
And
figure
that's,
out,
that'll be part of this plan.
Okay.
Mr. Keenan, a couple of additional thoughts. Appreciate your work on the plan and the staff's work on the plan. As compared to a large binder, it feels like this is a good way to run the business, and also I think for your constituent stakeholders, good way to, I guess, merchandise what your plans are and how you're doing against those plans. So a couple of thoughts with respect to sort of what's presented here. Strikes me that there are a number of different types of goals that you have here, right? So some, like goal 1.1 on customer engagement and satisfaction, top 25%. That to me, with that type of a goal, you have a specific metric, a numerical target, I guess I should say, that you're striving to meet, and a date by which you're planning to meet it. So it would be helpful, I think, to show in March. I hear you saying, early on you made the statement that there's a lot of yellow because we're early in the year, but also to show the actual status. So I know you have you have reference on page 7 to the latest customer satisfaction report, but if you could show where we are currently with respect to the top 25%, that would be helpful for those goals where we have a numerical status and a numerical target. I think that would be helpful to show so that we know some of what goes into the yellow. I see some of your comments are really driven by what we're doing, and I appreciate that visibility, right? That gives us a good understanding of how you're looking to attain the goal, but also the numerical targets there would be helpful. On slide 8, where you have a different type of goal there, like 2.2, where you're talking about workforce skills, that I would just have a question. How do you measure? That's a little bit more. It requires a little bit more judgment, maybe some discretion in statusing that type of a goal. It would be helpful to understand with that type of a goal, how we get there, and how you're statusing that as red, yellow, green, whatever it might be. And then a third example would be on slide 10. Just to jump around. So there, under grid operations, you have a long-term project where on 3.5, you're looking to fully automate 35% of GWP feeders by the year 2020. So I imagine there are milestones along the way. I don't know that those are equally weighted over the years between now and 2020. In some cases, there's work that you can do early. In some cases, it might be that you do some foundational work, and a lot of the goal attainment gets done late in the process. So mapping those out, I think, would be So I guess I should say more specifically for this year. Right, you have a lot of different goals in here. Some of them are to be attained in the current fiscal year. Some of them take several years, like this one here, that goes through 2020. So in those cases, like for this year, this fiscal year, it'd be helpful to understand what your goals are for the current year and how you're going to track progress against that.
Sure, and it's more the way I presented it, and I probably could have put more detail in there. If you look at the plan, though, like under customer engagement and satisfaction, it does have the 2 goals, but then it does list the 7 major initiatives that we believe if we meet those, we are meeting those goals. And so it's more, I guess, a better way to do this next time would to show maybe the status on each of those.
Very good.
And for those long-term goals, we can just give you an update of where we're at. So, if we save 35% of the feeders by 2020, we can tell you that at the end of this year, we were at 5%. In the next year, we were at 10%. Or we're marching towards that goal. Or maybe we were 5% this year and 6%. We had a slow year for whatever reason.
Right.
I do concur with Commissioner Kumako about putting the metrics within the color charts, the color-coded cells. Let's say if you do have that 5% feeder upgrade for 2015, then just put 5% in there and then mark it as yellow or something. And same thing as what you mentioned earlier about the unaccounted for water. let's say your goal is below 5%, but if we're at 6%, then you can put 6% within March 15 and then highlight it as yellow. So those are specific metrics that we want to compare to the goal. Is that your intention, Mr. Commissioner Camargo?
Yes.
Sure.
So at least we know what the metric is currently versus what the goal is.
And one more comment. So, this didn't strike me in looking at an earlier version of the plan, but I know that the city does quite a bit in order to not only maintain the safety of employees, but also public safety, especially around the electric infrastructure. So I know represented on slide 8, we have 2.4 is maintain a safe work environment for all staff at all times. I guess it strikes me now on reflection that we did not include a goal with respect to public safety. So maybe a little late for this year. But I guess based on the work that we do to keep members of the public safe, something to think about for next iteration of the plan.
Okay. Also, I think you're going to see that's probably one area that may get a lot of work is going to be safety and security, because you don't see a lot of talk about security in here. That's going to be a huge issue, is overall utility security. From a national security issue, a homeland security issue. So some of that starts to come together a little bit more cohesively in Washington. You're going to see us talk about it more, because that could really impact us. It could mean we have to upgrade our facilities and do different things. So that in and of itself may be one of the early revisions you see to the plan. But at the same time, we can talk about, really safety and security for our utility is of paramount concern to us, and obviously we do everything to keep employees safe and certainly keep the residents and customers safe too. So, but that's a good point. We can talk about that.
Any other comments? I think that brings us to 4D, solar program update.
Solar program update, Craig Keenan.
So, President Pro Tem, Commissioners, Craig Keenan, Business Transformation and Marketing Administrator. I'm here to give you an overview of our Solar Solutions Program. So the Solar Solutions Program was, we had one before, Senate Bill 1. It's typically called SB 1. When you were talking about solar rebate programs, it was signed into law in August 2006. Basically, that's when the state said this is how you're going to do your solar rebate programs, and they let the IOUs and all municipals know exactly how we're going to do it from then on. The goal was to install 3,000 megawatt hours of solar energy on homes and businesses by the end of 2016. Required all publicly owned utilities to adopt, implement, and finance a solar initiative program by January 2008. So SB1 divided the spending requirement amongst, there was a certain amount that was the IOUs had to do, and then there was this amount for municipal utilities. I believe it was around $780 million over 10 years, and they divided that by the size of each utility. Basically, they came up with a spending cap or a budget requirement for each municipal utility. It wasn't that you had to spend that, you just had to make it available over the 10 years. So, City Council approved our SB1 program on February 2008. Our spending cap was $15.2 million. We decided we would budget $1.5 million a year over 10 years for this program. We also divided that up into so much for residential, so much for small business, so much for large business, because what can happen in these programs, you can have one or two customers, large business customers, come in and take all the funding, and so we divided it up and ensured each group got their share. Our program ends in 2017. It would be June of 2017 since we're on a fiscal year basis. So there's some things with our solar program. We have small systems. We're under 300 or 30 kW. This is the incentive is paid by the KW, and the customer gets it when the system is installed. The larger systems are over 30 kW. The state has mandated that these incentives would be paid based on the kilowatt hours produced over the 5 years, and it would be paid annually. So you track how much is produced in a given year, and then on that anniversary, you calculate the incentive and pay the large customer. As part of this program, we pay 100% of all the cost of the permits. And we have a thing where we have a waiting list, or so if customers get on a waiting list, and then we'll guarantee pretty much that incentive will be reserved for them for a certain amount of time. That's what this last bullet means. So I know this is a little busy, but this tries to give a sense of what our incentives have been over the years and what they will be by 2017. In 2007, 2008, we were paying just on a kilowatt basis. You got $4 a kW installed. And if you signed over your green rights, you got a little bit extra. Well, what happened was the state said, well, you got to reduce your incentives by 7% a year each year through 2017, and then after for 10 years. It happens to be 2017 for us. And at the end of that period, you're not allowed to give any more incentives. So that's where we're at. Currently, the incentive is $1.61 per watt. And on the larger systems, it's based on 18.5 cents a kilowatt hour.
So what happened in 2011, 2012? Because it was not a 7% drop, but it was actually a 42% drop.
Well, there was our AGM of Customer and Support Services at the time wanted to review what we were providing as an incentive and try and make it more in line with what other utilities around us. So it did drop from 42% that year. So it didn't stop people from installing them.
Okay.
So if you look at the annual systems installed, as part of this program, we've installed 528 systems, and you can see we started our program in 2002, 2003 time frame, and it's grown each year pretty much, with the exception of a couple of years there where it declined a little bit, but it's been growing pretty much every year since then. In terms of KW, we have 3,860 KW installed. And if the 14, 15 numbers are just through today. They don't include the next 3 months. So, in terms of expenditures, we've spent $9.3 million so far on the program. Now this what I'm calling additional systems. We do own and operate a 202 kW system at Glendale City College that was part of our earlier program, a Solar Solutions program. But it's not included in the SB1. I believe the state doesn't allow us to include it. And we have customers who've installed about 125 systems totaling almost 2,000 kW where they didn't apply for or receive an incentive. Now, 1,500 kW of that, or 8 of those systems were large commercial. So most of those are large commercial systems that they just saw that financially it was beneficial to them to just go ahead and do it. Or they can also get a what do you call that special rate where they can sell power to us.
Feed-in tariff?
They can do net energy metering or feed-in tariff if they're not using the energy themselves.
But they didn't apply for whatever reason. They didn't apply for the program. The other solar, it's not part of the SB1 program, but we do have a solar schoolhouse program. It partners with the local schools to provide education about renewable energy. It's in partnership with the Rahaus Institute, And basically, it teaches a curriculum to teachers or educators, and then they teach their kids. Every year they have a annual solar workshop, which they had one this past Saturday. There was over 450 people attended, a lot of kids. Very exciting. We do it every year, and it's always a big success. So that's basically the update.
Question. So I think our spending cap is 1.5 million each year.
Yes.
Is that right? And it looks like based on slide 9, we're spending less than that.
Yes.
So what happens to the difference? Is that going to be, are we going to spend it in the last couple of years, or?
Well, the 15.2 million is a cap. It's not a required amount of spending. To the extent there's more money available, that would be a decision for, management and council, and if they want to put more money into it. But right now, 25% of our budget goes to this program. That's our total PBC budget.
So this is, we do the PBC budget every 2 years, and we include a amount in here. The most, correct me if I'm wrong, Craig, the single largest amount of money we spend is to subsidize rates.
Yes.
So those rates where we have low-income, senior, disabled rate programs, and as you all know, we increase those for the electric side of the business. We can only do this for the electric side of the business. We can't do it for the water side of the business. We increase those as past rate structure. So that's where most of our PBC monies go to. And as you know, you can't use ratepayers' revenues to fund those type of programs, nor can you use it to fund solar programs. I think solar is the second largest program.
Yes, about 33% low income, 25% of.
So we'll look at it, and as we get closer down, well, we've got two years left on the program.
Years, yeah.
We'll take a look, and if we can bump it up, we'll certainly do that. We'll reevaluate it in respect to the overall budget, and again, our number one priority being the incentive or the subsidies for ratepayers, for low-income ratepayers, and then take a look at this. But since I've been with the utility, the day that the budget gets approved, we break out that waiting list, and it's done. I mean, it's just a matter of signing papers. They're waiting, they're there, they're on the list, and you go to whatever number it is that we go to, 30 or 40 or whatever it is, and we're done for the year pretty quickly, at least as far as signing the paperwork, and then they have the rest of the year to try to get the system installed. So it's becoming more and more popular. It's creating a whole plethora of other issues for us as utility providers in what's called distributed generation and how it affects the grid. And there is a lot of talk, even with the fact that we subsidize this through a non-rate revenue, through the PBC program. There's been questions raised about, is there an unfair advantage to individuals who have solar programs versus those who don't? In the context, I think, of making sure of proposition or of AB 26. And so, interesting. But I think those are going to continue to come up as solar becomes more popular. But we'll see what happens when the incentives go away. I don't know. There's a chance they could decide to pass new legislation and continue the incentives. We've seen where incentives have been threatened to run out at a national level for especially incentivizing solar corporations, and you'll see that those suddenly come back and they get included in energy bills. The rest of the renewable energy business has a problem sometimes with solar, thinking that they are the favored child. I think our wind friends would tell you that. They think that the solar people get an unfair advantage. So to the extent that there's more pressure that way, I don't know. So it's all very, very interesting dynamic as we go more towards renewable, especially here in California, and all of the things we have to deal with it. But I think our program's been really successful, and I think the staff's done a great job in getting people exposed to the program, getting the funds out there, and getting the systems in place.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your update.
Thanks, Craig.
That brings us to number 5.
Oral communications.
I don't have any cards. If there's any member of the public that wishes to speak now or forever hold your peace. Going once, going twice. And we'll move on to item number 6.
GWP Commission jurisdiction regarding water rates. Doreen Martirosian.
Good afternoon, Commission President, members of the Commission. My name is Doreen Martirosian, Senior Assistant City Attorney. I am going to give you a brief summary of the drought rates, their implementation, how they came to be, and the Commission's purview and jurisdiction over them. As you recall, during 2014, we did a COSA, a cost of service analysis for the new water rates, and the drought rates were included in the COSA. Bartle Wells was the consultant that assisted us. We took the COSA out to the members of the community. We had public meetings. We brought it to the Commission, and ultimately it was adopted by the City Council with our new water rates. The ordinance was adopted on July 29, 2014. The drought rates were a part of the ordinance. They were adopted as a part of the ordinance, and they were designed to maintain the water fund's financial stability as a result of the reduction, which would occur every time one of the phases were to go into effect by the action of the City Council for water conservation. The implementation, the drought rate implementation as a part of the ordinance was a one-time implementation. It was adopted, as I mentioned, as a part of the ordinance in its entirety. However, they go into effect every time that City Council takes action in implementing phases 2, 3, 4, or 5 of the water conservation ordinance. Phase 1 is always in effect, and there is no drought rate associated with phase 1 of the mandatory water restrictions. The City Council on August 5th of 2014 adopted the water rates and set forth those rates to become effective, and at the same time it also implemented phase 2 of the mandatory conservation. However, it also suspended the implementation of the drought rates for a period of 6 months. That was a one-time action that the City Council took. We did not have to go back again, so the drought rates expired without any further action by City Council or staff on March 1st of 2015. With regards to the Commission's purview, we took a look at GMC Section 2.72-140 again, which sets forth GWE Commission's jurisdiction in making recommendations to the City Manager and City Council. And as the water rates were brought to the GWP Commission for their review, when GWP Commission made a recommendation for the water rates to be adopted by the City Council, the drought rates were a part of the water rates that were recommended. And again, the drought rate implementation was a one-time action taken by City Council. The Phase 2 declaration was an action taken by City Council, and the 6-month suspension was a one-time action taken by City Council without us having to go back. It expired on its own accord. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Previously, thank you, Doreen. Previously, we discussed the potential to implement a Phase 3 or Phase 4. So the correlated drought rate surcharge will also increase based on those different phases. So if the City Council decides to suspend the drought rate for, say, a Phase 4 for 6 months, is that still the discretion of the City Council to do?
It is, and it would have to be done through a resolution, much like it was done the first time with the initial drought rates.
Right, so if staff, GWP staff presents to the City Council a proposal to implement a Phase 4 conservation measure and the correlated drought rate surcharge, the City Council can implement a Phase 4 conservation stage, but suspend the drought rate for Phase 4. Is that also appropriate for City Council to do?
Commissioner Yao, yes, if City Council wished to, they could implement Phase 4, however, suspend the drought rates associated.
So if that's the case, couldn't this GWP Commission body make that recommendation to the City Council that to approve the Phase 4 stage, that the City Council can suspend the drought rate as well, and as part of the recommendation by this body? I'm not saying that we will or wouldn't do, but potentially couldn't that be the jurisdiction of this council, this commission?
You can make the recommendation.
Exactly, right.
And I would just carry that based on this is the commission. If that was in fact the majority of the commission's desire, would take it back to say the commission has recommended this. Whether or not that is in line with what staff's recommendation is, that may be different. So then I would give staff's recommendation to that. But we would certainly carry it back to say this is, and usually what we'll do is we'll state it in the report and we'll attach a copy of the minutes of the meeting. So council will know that was what the recommendation from the commission was. But that's exactly what I think you're using.
Absolutely, you would have the jurisdiction to make that recommendation, just as you make recommendations to the city manager and city council regarding GWP's business.
And then if we do make a recommendation to suspend for, say, 6 months on the drought rate, when that 6 month approaches, couldn't this commission as well make the additional recommendation whether or not to extend that drought rate suspension?
I think so, yeah.
Yes, you could certainly do that. At some point, I mean, it is an ordinance that the city council has adopted and deemed the policy to be that for purposes of the water rates, there is a drought rate component. So at some point, it might become an issue that they'd want to take it more broadly, or you might want to make a broader recommendation rather than considering it every 6 months. But it's within your purview to make recommendations to them, certainly.
Yes, I mean, I would like to have the transparency at least to discuss it, because I was surprised that the city council pretty much have it automatically approved this last drought rate surcharge rather than having a discussion to whether or not to extend the suspension or not.
Yeah, they did have a very extended discussion about it when they adopted the rates.
Right.
But it's in their purview as well to decide what they want to or not do. Right. And theirs was 6 months. And so we made them aware of the fact that it was expiring, and they chose that was it. 6 months is what they wanted to do. Their intent at the time was to try to avoid the sticker shock of a new rate plus the drought rate. We came right behind with the new rate structure with the drought rates to give folks a little bit of time, a little bit of relief, so that they got the new rate in place, although for a lot of people it was actually less, but then get the drought rate 6 months later, knowing full well the reason for the drought rate and the fact that we were losing money in an operation that couldn't afford to lose money. But we all decided that was in the council. We support the council in making that sacrifice to give people the opportunity to get a little bit of relief. But after that, then it becomes a much bigger financial issue, and I think council realized that, so we had no direction to extend that. That was totally up to them.
Does the ordinance explicitly provide for the council to adopt a resolution to suspend the rate? Is that part of the?
No.
That was
not
just
for
something
this.
that the council did on its own?
Correct.
Okay.
Again, it was kind of a real special circumstances situation. If it was that perfect storm of fees that were coming at people, and none of us liked the fact of what was happening and that we had to raise rates. Unfortunately, we had some errors that were done when the rate structure was first initiated, so we had to make those corrections. On the one hand, we raised rates in some areas. On the other hand, we gave a lot of money back to people who had been overcharged. And in the meantime, debated long and hard internally and then with the council about how we would be able to address the infrastructure fixed cost needs. And I think I had talked to you gentlemen about that. Was we looked at taking what is now the 70-30 ratio, 70 for the variable water sales, 30 for fixed, changing that just to 60-40. I will tell you, that would have been staggering to a lot of ratepayers. And that would have been in perpetuity. It would have been done. I mean, until at least council decided they wanted to change that. But it would have been, drought or no drought, you would be paying that rate. We thought it might be much better to put it into place tied to the drought rate. That way we cover our fixed costs during that period of conservation. And as you back off that mandatory conservation, the fee goes down all the way to when you go back to phase one, which is in place all the time. There is no fee associated with that. That's the voluntary phase. Not perfect. Again, it's tough. It's tough to raise rates. It's tough to put surcharges on our ratepayers in any way. But we did think long about this and thought this might be the better way to go, in that it's tied directly to mandatory conservation versus a permanent charge to the ratepayer.
Maybe you can indulge me for one last question on this scenario. If we do decide to make the recommendation to council to implement a phase 4, is it under the purview of this commission to make the recommendation on a phase 4 conservation stage that we do the phase 3 drought rate surcharge?
We'd have to change the whole ordinance, I think.
I think we might run into Prop 218 problems, because we structured our rates with the understanding that when we're in phase 3, we have phase 3 conservation, rather drought rates, and when we're in phase 4, it's the phase 4 drought rate. So that's more of a restructure.
Because I imagine Phase 4 requires different activities to be implemented, but the drought...
It's essentially based on curtailment. So Phase 2 is 20% curtailment. It goes to 30, 40, 50. So then we calculated from there with Proposition 218, making sure we had equity, and then assigned a drought rate, a surcharge rate per HCF for that particular phase. So it starts at 75 cents and goes all the way up to a little over $3, I think, for the last phase per HCF.
So the difficulty that we have as a commission is that the more successful we are at implementing the conservation measures, the worse we make the revenue problem for the utility. So, which is going to jeopardize all of the capital expenses that GWP is making to try and further reduce our water conservation or reduce our water use. So I don't know that I would feel comfortable making any recommendations about suspending the drought rate. That's a decision really for council to make. What we might do as we're starting to implement some of the new enforcement under Phase 3 and Phase 4 is ask council to suspend enforcement in terms of fines for a few months while people adapt and adjust to the new behaviors that they're going to have to implement. And that might be a easier middle ground.
And I think we can actually do that administratively.
Right.
We have, at this point, decided not to take that approach, but we certainly would present it to council. So if I understand you correctly, let's continue let's education, letters, phone calls, coming out and visit your house versus sending out the water police and fining you. I think that sounds perfectly reasonable to me.
Yeah, that sounds like a sensible approach.
But just a point, Mr. Hale, and you made it, it's excellent. When we were looking at just simply the 6 months, and we took a $1 million hit on that. And if we'd had extended a year, $2 million. Well, what we had seen was precisely what you said. If you recall, in our rate structure, we have a bond issue that goes to about 3 years, maybe about 3.5 years of infrastructure investment. After that, we were going to a pay-go capital system, electric and water side, where we would generate enough revenue, keep our reserves high, keep our costs down so that we could pay our own way. The likelihood is that would have been wiped out as a result of the loss we would have experienced. So when we got out to that years 4 and 5, there would have been no capital money. It would have ceased. So our potable water system maintenance would have gone down. We'd have been back to where we were when we hit the wall financially. But also, we wouldn't be able to put any recycled water systems in, which are directly related to dealing with the drought. So a vicious circle, I guess.
And as we get into Phase 3 and Phase 4, the more drastic our conservation is going to be, the more drastic the hit is going to be for the utilities revenue. So
absolutely.
I don't feel confident that we have the information in front of us right now to sort of look at what the revenue projections might be moving forward in order to make that kind of a recommendation to council. But it's certainly something that we might want to take a look at depending on the circumstances. Okay. Any other questions on this one? Thank you. That brings us to item number 7.
7 is agenda forecast.
Mr. President Pro Tem, if I may, I have changes to the May, proposed changes to the May agenda. So I think critical issues here are the budget, because we're going to, the city is in the city manager's office and the finance department have done an outstanding job of driving the budget. So the likelihood is that we're looking at adoption in sometime in early to mid-June. So I think it's important that we keep the GWP budget presentation to you in May so that you see it. And I like to have you take a look at it and see it ahead of time if you have any comments before it becomes a foregone conclusion. And then with that, the other important item there is the IRP plan update, the Integrated Resource Plan update. My guess is those two items are going to take a pretty fair amount of time, both of those. We're going to have, on the IRP, we're going to have the consultant come in and give you an overall presentation. It's a really, really important issue. Maybe one of the most important issues that this utility has undertaken in quite some time and will for quite some time into the future. So I think it's important to spend enough time on that. So I think on the renewable portfolio standards and the capital improvement programs, we can move those out to June. The agenda's a bit light in June. And then really just focus on the budget in that IRP. And let me double check, Mr. Abweg, we will be able, okay, just make sure we're all ducks are lined up for that May meeting. But I think you're going to find it a fascinating presentation. And it's not just about the repowering and Grayson. It's about the long-term transmission, renewables, and all of that. And of course, the budget is the guiding document. So I think spending the time on those two items is probably sufficient for a full meeting. That's my recommendation to you.
We have a motion to adopt that recommendation?
I don't know that you need one.
We need one?
You
Oh,
just
all right. Well,
just
that's
give me
fine.
the
As long as you
direction,
are-
and that's how we'll set up the agenda.
That's A-okay by me. Do any of the commissioners have any comments?
Comments, but,
Sure.
yeah, but I'm comfortable with the recommendation to move those two items to June.
Other than that, I think everything is pretty much, at least as of today, good. We're a little busy in July. As you saw in our strategic plan, we have a water master plan that we're undertaking, and we're also going to be looking at a recycled water plan. Mike, I don't know when your thoughts on the master plan being done? Before the end of the calendar year?
Yeah, the goal for the water master plan is to have it done by December.
Okay, so we'll let that roll over because there'll be some time once. Usually those dates slide a little bit. We'll get it nailed down internally, and that'll probably be a 2016 item for us to present to you. So we'll have what amounts to maybe the first water master plan we've done, at least
At least in quite a while.
that most people have seen, and then we're talking about what we're going to do with the recycled master plan as well. That's the only other thing I saw. But I think everything else is pretty much in line and ready to move forward.
Commissioner Camargo, did you have comments?
Yeah, just really a question, I guess, for the other fellow commissioners here is whether we should consider an update on the drought. Give us an opportunity to revisit that in May.
So that was my comment as well. If we can put in a water conservation update for every month, just an opportunity to discuss it, whether it be a 5-minute discussion, not a full-blown report like we have today.
Yeah,
but
that's fine.
Just to have it
No
so
problem.
that we can have that continuous discussion.
We'll just put it on the agenda.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. We should also have an update on where we're at in terms of the recommendation to council on Phase 2, Phase 4.
You got it.
Or Phase 3, Phase 4, rather.
That makes sense.
I'd also like to request that we actually get an update on the storage program in the context of the RPS program. So it's where is GWP's storage?
Electrical storage.
Yeah, electrical
yes.
storage.
And you're going to see that touched on in the IRP.
Yeah.
So that's an aspect of that. That really kind of is the first real push towards some major storage. We've been approached by a couple firms asking some questions, looking at potential opportunities, but we really wanted to wait till the IRP is done.
Yeah.
And then we'll keep you posted on that.
Great.
And in that vein, we will also be coming to you at some point. I don't know a date right now. I'll have to talk to Michael about this with the water storage report that we alluded to earlier, which I think you'll find fascinating as well.
Any other comments or modifications to the schedule? Okay, seeing none, I think we're done with that item.
8, adjournment.
So
Motion.
moved.
Second? Without objection, we are adjourned.